Welcome to Meet the CFOO or see-foo with John Bozin, our interview series. That's a fast-paced interview format focused on secrets to success and valuable learning and career advice, and big ideas for both aspiring and seasoned finance pros. Today's interview features John Bozin. We'll get to him. Let me introduce myself, Neil Brown, Executive Director of Controllers Council. And today's interview, as mentioned, features John Bozin. He is CFO at Armanino Strategic Finance Outsourcing, or CSFO, and see-foo, or pronounced see-foo, or CFOO specialist, the combination of CFO and COO. Or operating CFO is another way that John has told me that it's coined for certain sizes and types of organizations. Prior roles for John included Chief Finance and Administrative Officer, COO and Deputy Executive Director, and CEO of a variety of sectors, along with numerous boards of directors. And we're going to talk about John's career achievements as we get into the questions. So with that, John, I'd like to welcome you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here today.
Excellent. So John and I met down in Sarasota, where we both live, or I live part of the year. So, and we talked about doing this several months ago, and so I'm glad we're finally doing it. Our first question, I mentioned John's significant academic achievements include an MBA, an MS Technology Management, a BSBA in Project Management, a BS in Finance, and a Doctorate in Management, Organizational Development, and Change. So with that very deep academic credentials, John, what inspired you to pursue a career in corporate finance?
Well, as a child, and really sort of through my high school years, my dad had a pretty good amount of friends that were leading and managing large successful businesses, and kind of looked at those traits. And my father was a high-level officer in the military, and I just kind of really watched him manage staff and really be in a CEO type position. And so I always really gravitated and wanted to be a CEO, and more so of a meaningful organization, directing strategy, improving business, in ways that either deliver products and services, but also being able to be CEO that can deliver on quality, but also on price and value. And having kind of always discussed and been around those types of individuals, one of the things that they had always told me is that they had really gone through the ranks. They had really sharp pencils, and they were CFOs, and they kind of really went the CFO route. Then the stepping stone was the COO and the CEO. And so, being a CEO that is really well versed in, all of the executive disciplines, and I wanted to make sure that I was known for having an extremely, again, sharp pencil and a background that was just proven as a CFO. Is that, if I get into the leadership role, we're in a meeting, we're in executive sessions, that I could really partner with the CFO and I could speak that part of the business, because I always thought that was half of what a CEO did. You had to really know the numbers, then you'd have to be able to really take it to the next level. So when I really began my career early in the 1990s, the only way to become a CEO was through that journey, from the CFO role to the COO and then into the CEO position. And I think today it's quite a forgotten path, and one in which I believe is partly why the see-foo role is becoming ever so important. We're seeing CEOs with very limited executive experience. You see little to no financial acumen, and often only technical or creative experience. You're seeing people come out of technology roles, out of creative and marketing, really driving revenue growth and driving customer lists, but they're not really managing the back office or the business. And I think there's not enough sense of profitability, managing expenses. And one of the things that I learned early in my career, and probably in the mid-90s too, is that there's a lot of ways to grow a business. And you'll see unsuccessful CEOs and CFOs trying to grow that revenue base, and instead growing liability at the same rate, growing expenses, and next thing you know, you've got 5,000 employees, a ton of liability, and profitability and margins haven't expanded. So I had a lot of early experience of some really strong CFOs and CEOs saying, look, we need to focus on margin, profitability, And revenue growth will happen, but it'll happen organically when in the right way. So I think again, as a result, I think I wanted to make sure that I was what I call two sides of one coin. And one side of that coin being a financial expert, and no one can really challenge me that I didn't know the financial statements. I didn't know how didn't really know the inner workings of the business. And then the other side of that coin is being an operator, having strong leadership skills. And so with that goal, my journey to the CFO office as an important basis of my professional métier, my career began in that way. So I really started in gaining experience in finance, accounting, junior level positions, all the way up to the office of the CFO.
Excellent. Very interesting. Thank you for that. Let's take a look at, so tell us a little bit then about the roles and responsibilities of a CFOO and how do they differ from a CFO only or a COO only?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the first piece of it really is that the Chief Financial Operating Officer is first and foremost the CFO of the business, leading the entirety of the office of the CFO. And much to what my previous answer was that you got to be able to step from the CFO, the rudimentary fundamental concepts of finance and accounting, and those give you the tool sets to, I think, make effective operating decisions, and then also into leadership. So again, I think you're managing and leading the entirety of the office of the CFO, and fundamentally in charge of the company's financial health. That's the first piece you got to get right. And then the operations portion really encompasses the administrative, the back office processes, and in some instances, some front office responsibilities. You'll see every once in a while, you'll see some type of chief financial administrative officer or see-foo kind of dabble in some front office work, which often will include technology, sometimes marketing. But the chief finance and operating officer, I think, develops plans to improve a company's financial outlook. So that's the CFO piece. Then I think while also supervising different departments as they implement those plans, that's the operator hat. They take charge of financial processes such as portfolio management. They can weave in some administrative procedures such as ensuring compliance with government regulations. Just sort of as an example, I think the chief finance and operating officer, though, usually supervises several departments, like I said, from accounting to information technology and even human resources. The easiest way, I think, to define the CFO, though, is that they are the financial head of the organization, but that they have unique skills and talents to show up as a leader, having broad oversight and moving beyond singular tasks to navigate the business cohesively around financial and business performance. In order to be successful in the CFO role, I think you've got to be able to blend that traditional, like you were saying earlier, that CFO traditional roles, and then the COO skills and attributes. I think some of those attributes, I'll just kind of rattle off some of these, but obviously the operator pieces are strong mentoring skills. You have to have a desire to lead others. Often you'll see more traditional CFO kind of sit back behind the CFO desk, but to really encapsulate that, the CFO pieces, you want to lead others. You want to be able to coach across diverse levels of expertise, functional disciplines, and regardless if you are the expert in those areas or not, what you need to be able to do is put on that operator hat and be the expert in leading, operating, and not always be the one who can be, the expert in those functional disciplines. So I think a CFO is someone who is then also entrepreneurial. It's an entrepreneurial team player. You've got to be able to manage multiple projects. Often you'll see a CFO on maybe just a limited projects, but I think the combinations where you're coming in and just, a broad set of projects. And then you have the ability to influence, engage, and engage direct and indirect reports and peers through those processes. Of course, you've got to leverage a little bit more in problem solving. You've got to be able to anticipate and proactively address complex issues. Not that you're not doing that as a CFO, but the operator hat, you're kind of doing a little in a greater capacity. And I think you've got to be able to be a little more sort of energetic than you might be just in the CFO office. You've got a little bit more flexible. And I think what you'll find in what I'll probably end up discussing today is you've really got to focus on being proactive and collaborative and positively, and being sort of, productivity, impacting strategy and both not just strategically, but in terms of tactical finance and then administration and operations initiatives. I think the other piece too is expanding. Of course, all CFOs, they've got great, they're great orally. They've got pretty sound interpersonal skills, but you've got to be exceptionally written. You've got to be a great orator. You've got to have great presentation skills, the ability to interface with senior management, and all that driving down towards influencing staff to take that CFO data, take the operator information, that insight, and double down on it and get people to really go outside of their normal thinking. I think again, I've said you can't really just sit behind the desk of an accounting or finance module. You also need the ability, I think, to operate as a strategic thinker. Ultimately, I'd say one of the great answers, if you ask for just a single answer, how would the CFO go beyond MD&A? So every CFO is good at management, management discussion and analysis, but I think the see-foo piece is taking one step further than MD&A. Sort of ideating on it, planning, initiating, and then completing. That's where the operator hat comes in. It's taking that MD&A and actually putting into action and completing it. And I think that's really the overall vision and direction of where the see-foo position and responsibilities help to tie the CEO and the see-foo closer to one another. You're really starting to see these see-foo positions really become the right hand of the CEO. And in organizations where maybe they don't need or not large enough to have a COO, that see-foo sits close to the CEO. And you're also seeing in large organizations where the see-foo is just taking, there may be a chief operating officer, but the see-foo portion is maybe a little different part of the operations. Traditionally, maybe just the back office pieces where the operations person is handling other parts of the operations, and that see-foo person is sitting really close to the CEO. So I think a see-foo is the only person in the company who can gather financial information, that's financial specific data, and then the other data that lives across your operations, and then really spreading that back to the business. And I like to think of it as an organizational cube. You're taking this knowledge cube, you're taking, you could say it's a three statement of, financial data, then you're starting to take all this operations data, then you're going out as the operator and you're getting human data, and a great see-foo can turn that into a knowledge base, a cube. But I think the best see-foos, what they are able to do then is they're able to take that cube and inject it across the business, across the organization, say, you know what, we're turning this into initiatives and we're turning this into power. And I think that, that's really what, in a sense, what the see-foo really does. But I'll save my last piece on this answer here because I'm a little long-winded on it. It doesn't stop there. What makes this CFO of see-foo is taking that cube and harnessing it across the organization, and not only being the operator, but being the executive and championing and leading that change that drives the business, to actually the original financial outcomes of the CFO. So it's kind of circuitous. It comes back, I think, back to the CFO's original, objectives. And I want to put this one note in here too, because I think this really heightens and will enlighten people on what's changing out in the business. Between 2018 and 2028, the see-foo career is expected to grow 16% and produce about 105,000 job opportunities across the United States. And this is according to SHRM. So you can really see that this role is expanding and growing all the way to 2028. So about 105,000 jobs to be created, which is amazing.
Interesting. So there is actually stats on the.
Yeah, I did a little research on it, and SHRM's one of the best, and I knew it was growing, but to 105,000 job opportunities in the United States is significant.
That's really interesting, and that was a very thorough explanation. I was going to add to this question: is it industry specific? Is it company size? I mean, clearly a Fortune 500, Global 1000 might have separate positions. Maybe is it a mid-sized business that's more likely to have a see-foo?
I think it's the type of business. So, I was a division CFO of a Fortune 100 company. We had a chief accounting officer. We had a CFO. You've got all these variety of C-level positions. I think it's actually the type of business And I also believe it, and I can give an example of that. Those SaaS-based companies probably a great opportunity because those SaaS metrics, those SaaS financial data, and those KPI, they're so weaved into the finances that really move the business. And I think also a lot of it too has to do with the type of CEO you have. The type of CEO that probably was a CFO at one point says, you know what? I'm a traditional CEO. I'm somebody who's, again, maybe two sides of the coin, and I am going to drive this business around the numbers. I'm going to drive this business around financial performance. If you have one of those CEOs, I think there's a likelihood that the CFO and COO roles could possibly be morphed. Or when I worked in New York City Health and Hospitals, the see-foo role was created, and we also had a COO role, but the COO was more front office facing. And as a see-foo, I was all the back office and the financial operations. So I think it's kind of two types of situations. But I do believe, or I kind of see your question there, these much larger, Fortune 500 type entities, see-foo is not realistic. It's too large of a role, too many hats, too many duties. And you wouldn't be able to, you would need to divide and conquer appropriately.
Gotcha. And I would say this explanation, it seems like it might be one of the most complex roles that there are in any company.
I think so. And I think what I've learned is that you don't have to be an expert in everything. That becomes your weakness. You have to be an expert in leadership. And you have to be able to trust others. And I'll tell you a quick story. We'll make it fast, but early in my career, I had worked for one of the largest mutual fund companies in the nation and actually in the world. And I was moving up quickly, and my boss's boss called me, but my boss was out of town. My boss said, this guy was a rock star. He was just a great leader and quite the figure. And he called me and said, Bozin, get down to my office. And I was like, oh my gosh, why am I going down there? And he said, we're doing your annual review. And I said, well, my boss isn't here. He's like, I don't care, we're doing it. I've got important information I want to, impart to you. So I'm sitting in the chair, sweating, young guy. I look, I'm 50 years old today. I look really young back then. But he said, you are our best employee and our worst employee. And I almost fell out of my chair. I said, what is this guy talking about? He said, I'm going to tell you something, and it's going to be some of the most important information I've ever given to you, to anyone actually. You are just the quarterback of every play. I love you. You just really, the quarterback of every play. But he said, that's where you're such a vulnerability, because you get hit by a car or whatever, you leave, we are in trouble because you have all this knowledge, you are the expert. So I really, really want to help you become, and he used the football analogy, and he said, I really want to help you become the best lineman you can be. And he knew where I wanted to go. I wanted to be CEO someday, and he said, this is going to help you become the best, really, financial expert as well, because you need to get in there, play a line position, and I want you to create the biggest holes you can for others to run that ball through the end zone. And he said, when they score, you score, we score. He said, don't forget, when it's a 2-minute game, you're going to have the ball in your hand, but really use that as your guidance from now to, when you become a CEO, and actually when you actually attain a CFO position. That's the type of CFO you want to be. You want to know when you need to be a champion, when you need to facilitate, when you need to be side by side, and when you need to just take the ball in your hand. And so I also think that's helped me transition into the see-foo role much more successfully, because as an operator, you can't always just lead. You sometimes have to roll your sleeves up. Sometimes you do have to step out of the way. So I think that is a key story of kind of where I've been in my career and how it's really helped me become who I am.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I love the football analogy. And I think you played football and baseball in college, right? So
I did.
all right. Well, then nice segue to what have been the most significant keys to your success.
Well, I have a two-part answer I think I'll give you for this. I'll say really a significant key to my success has been to not really think of myself as a CFO, but really just as a leader with the financial expertise. He also really taught me, he said, you want to make others sort of extensions of your role. And so you go into an organization, you look across the organization, you want to make 1,000 other little mini CFOs. You want to get people to act and think like the office of the CFO. And you do that through leadership, you do that through influence. And so one of the things is, really not letting my peers or others think of me in any limited box just as a CFO, and taking on opportunities to contribute beyond the traditional roles of the CFO, raising your hand for projects, and just making sure you come to meetings and just you really engage in your business, and particularly where you're in settings with others, to not just walk in with your CFO hat, but just really be a leader. Come in there and contribute in every way you can, and not just from a financial perspective, and prove that the role is not limited to financial and data aggregation, but that those components are truly, they're just the backbone of that role, and that developing action from insight, that's the actual opportunity, is not just sitting on, used to think that the good CFO and you're here are the monthly financial statements. Well, he'd always tell me they're almost useless to me. They're look in the rearview mirror. What I need you to do is I need you to look at that, and I need you to analyze it. I need you to come to the meeting prepared. I want you to come with insight and things that are actionable, and I want you to contribute, because you've got a great vantage point, but you had nothing if you come to those meetings and talking about what happened 30 days prior. So I really owned that. I was frustrated in those early developmental years, but I really think sooner or later I just matured and thought about what he was telling me, and started to incorporate and integrate that thinking. And I was becoming a see-foo before I even knew it. There was no such thing as a see-foo, but it's the way he told me and kind of coached me around, be a leader. You're a C level person. You're not, don't let the financial piece define you. So, but I'll tell you what I really learned more importantly when I was actually getting my doctorate, and who doesn't have an MBA anymore? So I said, I want to I want to take it further. I want to separate myself from others. And so I took that even to a further step. I said, I'm a good finance, I have a good sharp pencil, good financial leader, strong acumen. And I said, well, now it's time to go really develop leadership. And one of the things I learned through this journey was, I guess I'll call it the single most significant key to my success. It's been through the utilization of a change model. It's called appreciative inquiry. You're probably going to think this is crazy. It's really way out there, but the approach has been the single greatest tool in my belt for the last 10 to 12 years. It's appreciative inquiry. It's a change model. It encourages organizations to focus on the positive aspects that exist within their practices. This model allows companies to fulfill goals or improve business operations by exploring the strengths they already have. And I've worked I used to be the CEO of a Health and Human Services Quality Improvement Organization, and all we did was just 98% accurate, but we always focus on the 2% and then the negative. But appreciative inquiry it's commonly called an asset-based or strength-based approach to systems change. It emphasizes positive idea generation over negative problem identification. And negative problem identification, it's really that's a deficit-based approach. And on the contrary to a negative approach, appreciative inquiry utilizes questions and dialogue to help participants uncover existing assets, looking at strengths and advantages, and just really looking for opportunities in your organization or in your teams, and then collectively taking that information and working toward developing and implementing strategies for improvement. So, appreciative inquiry, it's grounded in what they call social constructivist theory, which it sort of posits that human development is a fundamentally social process. Both knowledge and organizations are constructed through social and cultural interactions, and relationships and dialogue. And so I really worked hard to take what that original conversation was, 27 years ago, or 25, 26 years ago, take it entirely another step. And when I engage with people, I wear the right hat. Am I a champion? Am I facilitating? Am I leading? Am I coming as a CFO? And really also just trying to be positive and create positive interactions. And then the other piece I try to do is where I have opportunity, I try to coach at an executive level with all staff members. Like I said, trying to make others become mini CFOs. And next thing you know, they're in a conversation with a peer and they're talking like a CFO. Hey, but you know what? Would that drive our margin? Hey, does that make sense for us here? Would this help us with revenue? So I've really tried to make that really, I think, the epitome of who I am as a leader. So I'll kind of just say, how does the see-foo take that knowledge cube and spread it back across the organization to derive success and progress? Like we were talking earlier, they do through people. They do through integrating people into processes and processes into people. And I think that question there is the answer to what a CFO really is. It's through collaboration, it's through empowering others, it's through the power of others. see-foo is the catalyst for helping others understand, interpret, experience change, and within the organization, again, championing, helping people organize themselves and to achieve goals.
Wow. Amazing, John. Great information. So this is a easy segue again. What advice would you give to others that seek a CFO or see-foo career?
Well, I have I guess I'll give you two answers on this. I think the first one is you can't stay within the margins. If you're someone who's staying within the margins, I don't even think you're a CFO today. Those days are removed by 20 years. If you're sitting behind a desk counting a bean, you're not a CFO. You've got to, at the same time though, you don't want to be a maverick. You don't want to go outside the margins in any, maverick way. But it's about being inquisitive. You have to have a desire for learning new concepts. Again, also it's about dialogue, and then ask more questions. And then make it a habit to never eat lunch alone. I mean, you just don't want to. Every opportunity you have to eat lunch, why not invite someone where you can have dialogue and you can learn? If you don't have someone to meet up for lunch, then eat lunch while you're watching a LinkedIn Learning or reading a book. But a lot of those things don't need to be around your specialty as a CFO. Though you need to stay on top of the trade. You need to stay on top of your, make sure your pencil stays sharp, your knife is sharp. But don't sit behind a desk again. Leverage the power of the staff and the experts within your entire organization and learn from them. Once a week, try to have lunch with someone and get to know them and what's driving them, what's new in their business, and what new concepts do they learned. And that's going to make you such a sharp CFO. And if you're in a role of a see-foo, it's going to make you even sharper. And those connection points are what are actually going to get projects and initiatives to hit the bottom line. So, harness that information, weave it into the traditional CFO data streams, and you'll find that you're one step closer to becoming a see-foo. And say, most importantly, you'll find that you're already a leader, most likely, and you just didn't even know it. And that people have been watching you and waiting for you to actually lead them. But I'll lead back to another point I made is really actually my most important piece of advice. As I previously mentioned, from now to 2028, the see-foo career is expected to grow 16% and produce about 105,000 job opportunities across the United States. If you want to become a see-foo, the opportunity is waiting for you. You got to go seize your moment. And so, you got to wake up tomorrow and you'll be one of the 105,000 people with that job opportunity to lead organizations and take them into the future.
Wow, you sold me. I want to be a see-foo when I grow up. It sounds awesome, John, and it does sound very complex. And obviously, I could see the communication skills coming through. You have to be articulate and knowledgeable and that other collaboration piece that you talked about as well. So wow, that was just so interesting. I know our members are going to enjoy hearing this very specialized version of the Office of the Controller and CFO. We're trying to cover different areas like CAO and others. So thank you for this insight today, John, and we look forward to further collaboration with you. And there may be some questions that we get post webcast when we publish, and if so, I will send those your way.
Sounds great. It's been my pleasure today, and I hope people will realize too, if you don't ever become the see-foo, you've just advanced yourself as a CFO. And so whether you carry the O in your title or not, it's an advancement of yourself professionally.
Excellent. Thanks again, John. We'll have a great day, and we will talk soon.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care. Bye.